On this episode of This is Game Boy Lite, it's just me, myself, and I. Hello everybody and welcome back to another brand new episode of This is Game Boy Lite, the little show in between our full episodes where it's just me, Moelle, or EBC, well formerly known as EBC, spelled in gaming now, where we do a little podcast on our own talking about various topics, and this time I'm actually not going to be talking about a game or a game series or a lot of games like for the Halloween special where I talked about a multitude of games. This day I'm actually gonna talk a little bit about myself because, as we all know, I am the most important person in the world, so everybody should always have to listen to everything that is about me, so that's what I'm gonna do today. But seriously, I did not really find a good topic for this recording, so I was just thinking, look, what can I talk about that has nothing to do with games themselves, but maybe something that people might be interested in when they are listening to this podcast. And I thought, like, let's introduce myself a little bit. It's been long overdue. Of course, a lot of people who know me from everything else that I do besides this podcast know who I am. But for people who probably have, never seen me stream or have never talked to me in any other sort of way, probably don't know who I am, so I think this is a good opportunity to just talk about where I came from and how I ended up actually being on this podcast and doing this podcast with my good friend Baltic and of course our lovely producer Lex. So we're gonna dive into that. I'm gonna start like when I grew up. I'm gonna talk a little bit about my past, what happened that made me what I am today. So take a little short break and then we're gonna dive right into that. Alright, welcome back everybody. Hope you enjoyed that nice little music. I have no idea what Lex picked, but hopefully it's gonna be something good. So yeah, talking about myself is a little bit weird, of course, but I hope everybody is kind of interested to know who I am and what I have been doing for most of my life. So let's start at the beginning. My mom and dad had a very fun night probably and ended up in bed, and then 9 months later I was born, so that's how that goes. But I never grew up really in a family of gamers. Most of my family members are not gamers at all, which is of course a little awkward sometimes when we have family meetings, because I don't really have anybody to talk about. Look, I'm a streamer, I play video games and people watch it. A lot of the times people just look weird at you and then just move on to another topic of conversation. So yeah, that's always a little weird. But yeah, besides a few of my cousins who had an NES growing up, or who had a Sega Mega Drive, I believe, growing up, there weren't really any people that interested in gaming. A little later on, like one of my cousins actually got a little bit into PlayStation 1 for a while, and her dad, my uncle, picked up his quote-unquote gaming career out of that. He really loves car racing games like Gran Turismo or the rally games, so he's still to this day playing those games, but that's not really a genre I'm into, of course. But they did have a lot of games that I borrowed. besides the racing things, of course. So yeah, for me, my earliest memory of gaming, however, is on one of the NES systems that one of my cousins had. I think I might have been around the age of 3 back then, so I can't really remember anything that came before that. But I grew up playing the NES, and mostly I actually was playing Mega Man 3, which to this day is still probably my favorite game of all time, because that's the game that really shaped me. And for people who have played Mega Man 3, you know that's not an easy game, especially not for a 3-year-old. My cousin, I think she is 8 years older than me, something like that, was never able to get anywhere in that game. I think she was only able to defeat Snake Man, and I somehow managed at the age of 3 then to actually beat that game. So that was pretty impressive. But yeah, those games kind of shaped the way I look at games, the way I play games, and which games I actually do play most of the time. But yeah, that's my earliest memory, at least. I didn't have my own gaming system. Like I said, I did not come from a family of gamers, so there weren't things like the Atari or any stuff like that before I got into gaming. And I think at the age of 4 or 5, my mom finally bought me a Game Boy, and well, you all know this is a Game Boy podcast, so I guess that's where the seeds got sown. So I ended up being here today doing this Game Boy podcast. There's 2 things my mom always say when she talks about that moment. One, she has never seen me as happy as when I opened that package and, and I saw that it was a Game Boy. And the second thing she always said, I wish I would have never bought you that thing, because it all went downhill from there. But that's of course more in a jokingly way, mostly because, of course, my parents had to spend a lot of money getting me newer games and newer systems and things like that. So I can see where that is coming from. What you always have to keep in mind is that gaming nowadays is becoming a little bit more, how do you call it, accepted, I guess. But back then it was still considered to be very antisocial to be a gamer. Everybody looked at you like you were a nerd, but that's changing slowly, because it's still a weird thing to talk about, especially here in Belgium, where I'm from, by the way. Like if I go out with friends and you meet new people and they ask you, what are your hobbies, what are you doing, and you start talking about video gaming, at least on a quote-unquote professional level, I would say, like, not that I'm making any money out of this, not that I'm a competitive player or something like that, but I do consider my gaming career nowadays to be more professional than just your leisure gaming through the week. Yeah, if you start talking about that, you get really weird looks from a lot of people, especially because besides Call of Duty games and FIFA games and other sports games, for the majority of people, they don't know anything about it. So yeah, that always results in awkward conversations as well, and very awkward looks. I hope that will change later on. Like, I'm 32 years old almost right now, and it's weird that it's still kind of a taboo, actually, to call yourself a gamer, because people always think, oh, he's just one of those people that never comes outside. But then I say, well, I'm right here in front of you. If I would stay inside, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. So yeah, that's a little side turn that I took there. But yeah, so the Game Boy was something I held dearly. I spent a lot of my time as a young kid playing that thing. I wasn't really the guy that went out to play dates, I guess, as they call them, with friends at their homes. I was usually just on my own playing video games, which didn't mean I didn't have friends, because I actually went to play soccer with a whole bunch of friends for few years. Sports isn't really my thing, which was very obvious when you saw me play. So I quit that after like 3 or 4 years. But yeah, the gaming thing was always there. A lot of my friends also had Game Boys, so could exchange games with them. That was always pretty cool. The next thing that I bought was a Super Nintendo. I saved up for that myself, from like money that you get from like your uncles or your grandparents. I saved up for that. I got that. I was really happy. And like we talked about before, like me and Baltic, the biggest reason why we probably got the Super Nintendo was because it came with a Super Game Boy, so we could play those Game Boy games on TV. Going a little further, the next thing that I bought, at least, and a lot of my friends bought, was the PlayStation, the first PlayStation, mostly because Nintendo 64 came out a year later here. So PlayStation had a bigger market already, so everybody just got that, and it was super impressive, and we absolutely loved those games. So we spent a lot of time together, like in the homes of friends, just gaming the entire time until Tony Hawk came out, which was a revelation, and then we all got into skateboarding. Like I skated for 6 to 8 years, I can't remember exactly, until I got an injury on my foot. I almost tore my ankle muscles, I guess. I don't know what they're actually called, but my foot was literally black after that, and I kind of got scared of doing more daredevil-y things on my skateboard, so kind of went downhill from there until I eventually stopped at the age of, I would say, 21, 22. I think that's when I actually stopped skating. But yeah, I was still gaming even then. Like, we went out for skateboarding for periods of like 8 hours a day, but even when I got home, I was still like playing video games, mostly just on my own, like PlayStation games. And then there was a time, probably around the age of 15, 16, where first-person shooters became very popular, of course, as at least the multiplayer aspect of it. I didn't have a computer, an actual computer, before I was 16, and I actually needed to get one for school to do some assignments on. There wasn't a computer around the house until then. I didn't have internet until then. So when I got that one, of course, I also stepped into the first-person shooter league with my friends. We played Medal of Honor Allied Assault on a pretty decent level. I think we were third in the world at one point. We did some LAN parties here and there, which was a lot of fun, just hanging with friends and playing, but you could always tell that competitive scene and those first-person shooters and multiplayer games weren't really my thing, so after a while I just stopped playing those completely. I think Battlefield 2 was the last one that I got, which was fun, but I didn't play it competitively. I just played it together with another friend. We were just having fun. Like, I was really good at shooting from the helicopters and the tanks, and he was very good at like flying. So we just teamed up and had some fun with that. But that's really the final first-person shooter multiplayer game that I actually dove into, and I kind of miss that game. I don't know if I can still play it on my PC, if there's even people still playing that. Maybe one day I'll just install it to see what's going on. That will probably take like 10 minutes anyways nowadays, even with all the patches I would need to download. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with that, but again, it wasn't really my thing. I wanted to play other games, single-player games. I was really into RPGs, so those are quote unquote the antisocial games for sure. So they're really just a thing you have to dive into yourself. So I was still doing that. Of course, then I went off to college. I studied communications and multimedia design. Maybe going back to what I did in high school, I just did economics and modern languages, which is Dutch, which is of course my mother tongue, German, English, and French. So it's nothing special, but what I learned in economics was useful for communications and marketing. And ever since I was a kid, I was always drawing. I was always coming up with stories and things like that. So it was normal that I went into a little bit more of a creative education program after my high school years. So I did that. Got introduced to programming, got introduced to Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, things like that. Like I said, marketing and communications, and also video and audio. So those were the 5 main branches that I had during my education in college. I got my bachelor degree in that. I tried twice to get my master's degree, but that was really just making a paper, a thesis, which wasn't my thing at all. I couldn't come up with any really good, what do you call it, topic to go on. And yeah, I just let it slide and decided, you know what, I'm 24. I've had enough of school. I'm just gonna call it quits here and see what the job market has to offer me. And to hear what that job market had to offer me, I will come back after this little break. And we're back. So yeah, stopped college. Well, stopped. I got 1 degree. I didn't get my master's degree. So it was time for me to look for a job. And I always wanted to work for like a communications company or an advertisement company or a web development company, anything like that, as a graphical artist. Sadly, and I know a lot of people will know this story, but every time I went to an interview, all I was hearing was, yeah, thank you for coming, but we're looking for somebody who has at least 5 years of experience in this business. We cannot help you with a job, sadly. That's something that's still going on to this day. Belgium is also not the most innovative country in the world, at least not when it comes to that front. Not only the government, but a lot of companies have a very old direction. That's not how you call it. The head of the companies, that they're really old people. They're scared of innovation and things like that. So the few companies that do innovate, like, they are always looking for people, of course, with experience, which is of course something you can get if nobody wants to hire you. And yeah, I just couldn't get a job at all, and that lasted for, like, I would say almost 2 years at least. But halfway during that, I was bored. Of course I was bored. Like, I was just sitting at home, I was sending in my resumes to companies. What else could I do? So I just got back into gaming a lot more. Not that much in retro gaming. I was just playing the newer games as far as I could. I actually played MapleStory for a while together with a friend, which was fun. But again, just like with the first-person shooters, the multiplayer things, MMOs weren't really my thing, so that lasted for maybe a year, and then I gave up on it because it was just too boring for me. I like games where you have an ending and not something you have to keep putting hours into and you're not really reaching a goal. Well, I know a lot of people do have goals in that game, but for me, it's just something to spend your time with, but not really achieving anything ever. So yeah, I just got back into my single player games for quite a while, and when I was bored, I was just looking up stuff on YouTube, like gaming videos, nothing really special because I wasn't really following a lot of big YouTubers or anything. I was just looking at random videos. And one day, me and my friend went to a convention, and I found a copy of Mega Man 1 for NES. And years before, I picked up an NES on a flea market for like literally €5 or something, which is what, $7, I would say. So I had that lying around, and I was like, yeah, I really would like to play this game. This is really cool. I had been playing some retro games on emulator, but it was much nicer, of course, to play the actual game on console. And the person selling it was like, oh, but you have to be careful because this is an NTSC copy. Of course, I'm from a PAL region, so I had a PAL NES. So I was like, don't worry about it, I'll just pick it up, because I had read that you could mod your NES. And so I got home, I modded my NES, which was really easy, to be honest. It's just like a pin you have to pull out and everything is done. Opening that thing up, though, I have never seen anything so dirty in my life. Like the dust bunnies that were in there, it was incredible. Never seen anything like that in my life. And I've opened up many consoles since then, but that was just so gross. I think I spent over an hour just cleaning it. So I don't know what the person who I bought it from did with that thing, but yeah, I actually don't want to know. But yeah, with doing that, like, I really got into playing retro games again. So I was just, again, watching YouTube because I looked up how to mod my NES and things like that. And I think the first big YouTuber, I don't even know if he was on YouTube back then, but the first like video game reviewer I came across was actually Angry Video Game Nerd. I just immediately fell in love with the type of videos he created. Like, it was crude humor, talking about games, of course. Wow, can I say that word? Lex, please don't cut that out. I don't mean it as a thingy. It's a game. Can't really say anything else about it. But yeah, that was really funny to see. And the guy kind of looks like me, like James Rolfe. Like, if I would shave my head until like I got really short hair, and I would put on a white shirt and put a bottle of what's a Rolling Rock in my hands, and you would probably be able to see that, yeah, there's a resemblance for sure. I would have to shave as well, though. But yeah, anyways, yeah, so I got into those videos. I watched probably all of them. I don't know how many there were out back then, like maybe 30, maybe less, I don't know. But yeah, that was really fun. And then for people who follow Game Grumps, that actually started around that time. Like he and, well, Egoraptor and Jontron started the channel like right around that time. So I saw that video pop up because I knew Egoraptor because I spent a lot of my youth on Newgrounds. So I was familiar with his work, and I always appreciated his stuff. So I was interested in that. So I started looking at that. And that was the first Let's Play I've ever seen in my life. It was really funny, and I was like, you know what? I'm not doing anything at this point in my life. I do need the skills for a job. Like, I need to know video editing, I need to know audio editing, and whatever graphical work that could come from that. So I started experimenting with that myself, and I don't think I've ever plugged this on the podcast, but I did make a Let's Play channel called wait, what did I call it? Oh yeah, I wanted to name it Nostalgamia, but I couldn't get that handle for some reason, so I named it Nostalgamia Begins, I think. But yeah, I started experimenting with that. I did a few. I did Kirby's Dream Land 2. I did the New Zealand story. And then a Steam game called Shipwrecked, I believe. So those were the only 3 things I did, because right when I was doing that, I actually found a job, so I didn't have time anymore for that. But yeah, that has nothing to do with the rest of the story, of course. But yeah, I watched those videos and I was like, yo, it's really fun to see people entertain other people with making these videos. The last one I picked up was The Completionist, which was amazing because he did what I have always have been doing, which is completing games. And I was like, whoa, this is a really cool channel. And one day I got a message from, probably on YouTube or on the website, I think it was Normal Boots back then, got a message that he would be streaming. I have never seen a stream before in my life. So I watched that, and after watching that stream, which was actually not him but his brother who took over his channel for the day, kind of hacked into his account and just started streaming. But yeah, once I saw that, I was like, this Twitch thing, this is really cool. I'm not doing anything. Why not start streaming myself? Like, I kind of want to play all these retro games. A lot of people seem to be interested in watching them. So I set up my own channel and started playing very old video games. What I played first were just things that I had lying around, of course. But then I started to meet other streamers, mostly out of the Mega Man community, because Mega Man was a big thing for me. Like, as I said before, Mega Man 3 was my favorite game, so I started looking up people playing that game, of course, and the other ones. So I met a lot of very interesting people back then, like, you probably, if you know anything about the Mega Man speedrunners, like Slurpy Ninja, I got Fast at CC, Peapod Dot, all those people I met just through streaming. So I was a big part of that community as well for quite a while. Like, sometimes if I go back to one of their channels, because I don't watch Twitch myself that much anymore because I'm so busy, but when I go back into their channel, I'm always a mod. So I was definitely a very big part of that community. But yeah, I met a lot of people through there. Started speedrunning Mega Man myself, only for a small while though, because I got really angry at it. It wasn't really anything for me. But yeah, I met a lot of people through that. And one person I met was called Asbestos Bear. That was his Twitch channel, at least. And I was always hanging in his channel, and he was always hanging in my channel. And one day we just decided, hey, let's make a podcast together with 2 of his friends. So we did that for quite a while, actually. So that was the first podcast I ever did, and you can still find it on the internet. It's called the World 1-1 podcast, but be advised, there's a few people who took that name after we stopped, so there might be multiple of them out there. But yeah, the website was just world11.com. I don't know if it's still live, but I'm really sure the episodes are still on the internet. So yeah, we did that podcast for quite a while. We have quite a few episodes out there. It was a really fun thing to do, but Asbestos Bear got married. The 2 other guys also got married. So we kind of split ways. Again, those were people from America. I was from Europe. It wasn't always the easiest to find good times to do recordings, of course, with family life coming into it and work life coming into it. So after a while, we just stopped doing that. Asbestos Bear also stopped streaming because he didn't have time anymore. So I was left behind on that, so no more podcasts for me. But I was still a huge. Yeah, I was still hugely into the Mega Man community, so together with those guys, we did a lot of fun stuff for sure. After a while, though, I got really tired of having to play the same game over and over and over again. So I kind of stopped speedrunning Mega Man games. I kind of stopped watching the speedruns of Mega Man games. And I just wanted to do something on my own, really. And by then, I decided, I grew up with Game Boy. I really miss playing those games. I'm just gonna become a casual streamer. I'm just gonna play those Game Boy games that I loved when I was a kid, and we'll see how that goes. So a lot of people seemed interested in that. So, well, not not the biggest crowd, of course, but a lot of people from the Mega Man community at least seemed interested in that as well. Definitely somebody who we have mentioned a few times before sticked around with me, who's PLD, back then PLD 90X, but that was definitely one person that came over to my channel because he was also sick and tired of the Mega Man speedruns. And like we talked before about how Tiny 10 came to be, yes, Big 20 was coming and I was doing the Game Boy thing, and then somebody just said, why don't you do a speedrun thingy for Game Boy, and that's how Tiny 10 came to be. We talked about that in our Tiny 10 episode. But that was a big turning point for a lot of people. Like PLD got more into, well, basically routing Game Boy games. He did do a few games that he actually ran, one of them being Mega Man Dr. Wily's Revenge. Put a lot of effort into that. Tremaine came into that group. Bangera, who you might know from a lot of ESAs, came into the group. And you could see that very small Game Boy community, for speedrunners that is, really got bigger and bigger. We got Nadua in, who was very technical. He could look up a lot of stuff from a technical point of view, like which is the best emulator to run on, which is the best system to run on, all those kind of things. And we needed a platform to come together and talk about those things. So PLD actually made the Discord, the Game Boy. I think it's just called the Game Boy community. I don't know. I actually don't know what it's called. Yeah, he made that, and a lot of people came in, and we put our heads together, and we tried to do our best to newcomers for the Game Boy Speed runners, to welcome them and to show them, this is how you do this. You have to be careful of these things, and yeah, we pretty much became the number one spokespeople. Is there a whatever? But yeah, we became the platform to provide newcomers with what they needed to actually speedrun Game Boy games. Again, for me, speedrunning was, I just can't put too much effort into one game. That's why I'm usually just a casual streamer. I do provide, of course, games for the Tiny 10, which is a speedrun marathon. I like helping out with those. I like looking for maybe new tech to speedrun, but I don't like actually running games myself for a long time. Like, there's only one game I actually ever put real effort into, and that was Darkwing Duck for Game Boy, until Zymont came along and literally destroyed my record. But yeah, it's not for me, but I'm still big into the whole speedrunning community for Game Boy, of course, and not as much for the speedruns itself, but just to make sure that a lot of people know about Game Boy, that they know about the games, that they know that there are other systems besides NES and Super Nintendo to play speedruns on. And as I've said before, my biggest goal is just to make sure that people are informed about Game Boy in its whole, not only the speedrunning aspect, but also like lesser known games. And that's, of course, why the podcast came to be eventually. What I did after a while, because we were always talking in the Discord and we always had to explain everything again and again and again. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to make a website. I'm just going to put all that info on there that we have been using for quite a while, so that people just have a place to go to, just look it up. So I made the website gbrunners.com. Like I said before, though, I am not really, or maybe I skipped past that, but I'm a graphical designer. I'm not really a developer or a coder or a programmer, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I had to use a CMS, which is a content management system. So it's pretty much a website made for you, and you can change things around in it. But yeah, I made a website. It's not the best website, but it has what you need, and I'm looking forward to actually making it a better website in the future. But that's definitely future talk. But yeah, that's a little history about how that entire community came to be, and out of that, we got, of course, me, EBC back then, Baltic Gaming now, PLD, Oh Dear, Bangara. We definitely need more representation of Game Boy on Twitch, so let's make a team for Twitch. And around that time, Granen Hero actually joined up as well, and he's partnered. He still is, I think, the only one who's partnered from all of us. So he had the ability to actually make that team, and out of that came Monochrome City. We wanted to do a lot with Monochrome City. We wanted to make that a channel where all of us would stream to periodically. We still kind of want to do that, but it's really hard to find the time, especially with all the things we are doing. Maybe one day we'll get around to it for sure. At least I hope so. Like, we have plans set in motion, but we haven't really been doing anything with them. I think Baltic did a few streams for Game Boy achievement hunting, which was really cool. I did a Turtles Trilogy marathon, so it's always fun doing stuff like that is not tied to our own channel, but more a community thing, a team thing. But yeah, we still haven't figured out how to actually provide constant content to produce on that channel. But yeah, besides just streaming, after a while we decided to make an album, the Monochrome City album, which has 5 Game Boy songs from each of the members. Our favorites put together on an album for everybody to listen to. I made the booklet for that, which was really fun. And after a while we just started talking about, you know what, let's make a podcast. Why not? Like, podcasts are cool. We keep talking about games constantly on our channel, so why not record conversations between 2 or more people from the Monochrome City team and just put it out there. So yeah, after a while I was just like, you know what, let's do it. Let's stop talking about it and just make it. So me and Baltic just recorded it, and Lex immediately said, yeah, I want to produce this. I kind of want to learn how to edit audio. So yeah, that's how this podcast came to be. Yeah, I think that's about all I can really say. I could talk for hours, of course, about how everything came to be, and little tiny details here and there, but I don't think anybody's interested in that. But I think that kind of wraps up the story here. I'll let you listen to another great song picked by Lex, and then I'll come back to say my goodbyes. And welcome back. Hope you enjoyed that little song. So yeah, that was a story of who I am and how I came here. Maybe Baltic will do one of these in the future as well. Maybe he'll get inspired by me. But yeah, I really wanted to do this so that people who don't know me or don't know much about me actually know who is talking to them. So yeah, I don't know if I talked about it in detail enough, but Game Boy is really a passion project that we have been trying to show to a lot of other people who might not have been that interested in Game Boy to begin with. We do have a lot of plans for the future. So, like I said before, I really want to redesign the website so that it's not only a speedrunning thing, but also more of a thing where a lot of us can maybe write articles about it, just tie it in a little bit more with the podcast, maybe with the Monochrome City team. Just make it a very good source for anything Game Boy related, because sadly, there is not that much Game Boy related information out there. I think we said it before, like there's Game Boy Works done by Jeremy Parrish, there's a few Game Boy channels, video channels out there, like Boyographic does a lot of Game Boy video games, but besides that, there's not much. I think there's one other podcast that does Game Boy called Strictly Game Boy. So yeah, there's not that much information about it, which is sad because it's a really cool system that people overlook quite often, and even though they have a lot of nostalgia for it, so every time we mention Game Boy to somebody new, they're like, "Oh yeah, I loved that handheld," and yet they still tend to steer towards NES and Super Nintendo, anyways, which is kind of weird because Game Boy deserves all the love it can get. But yeah, anyways, that's my story. Hope you enjoyed it. Maybe it was boring as heck, but yeah, I know, no, I didn't have a good topic. I think this was at least fun for me to talk about. Where I came from. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this. So me and Baldi will be back in 2 weeks for another normal episode where we will talk about Wizards and Warriors X Fortress of Fear. See you then. Um, Sorry, I had to burp. And I'm still burping. Okay, I don't know what I was saying.